You might be aware that BattleTech is a bit of a thing in Germany, or at least was in the 80s and 90s. There were numerous fan clubs and it was played a lot, and a lot of stuff has been translated into German. And some of it isn't actually a translation, it is a completely exclusive new product. One such thing is this book, released in 2002, written by Reinhold H. May and Christoph Nick. It's BattleTech, die Welt des 31. Jahrhunderts. BattleTech, the world of the 31st century. It's an interesting book because nothing quite like it exists or existed in English. The upcoming BattleTech Universe book that's coming out in the Kickstarter, I bought it and will be reviewing it when I get it, is sort of partly what this is, because it's not a source book. It's not a scenario set or campaign book. It is an overview of BattleTech as a franchise, as a media franchise, but also as a universe. Like, it has historical events in the BattleTech universe. Before taking a closer look at some of the parts of this book, I think it's a good idea to look at the back cover of this book, what it promises us. All right, so BattleTech is the most successful sci-fi novel series of the recent years. Based on the role-playing game of the same name, it has sort of captivated millions of readers around the world. What's behind this success? On which fascinating planets does the story play out on? Who are the most important characters? And, of course, how do these gigantic battle giants work that sort of so decisively define the universe? In this unique non-fiction book, there are answers to these and many other questions. For example, you'll find here a comprehensive chronology of historical events in the BattleTech universe, detailed biographies of the most important characters, detailed star maps, and up-to-date data on individual clans, explanation of the most important technologies and specifications of the BattleMechs, interviews with the creators of the series and its most beloved author, Michael Stackpole, a list of all BattleTech novels, including short descriptions of their contents. And this is a carefully researched book by two proven BattleTech experts, and this comprehensive compendium provides both the avid fan and the newcomer to BattleTech with the necessary equipment for a journey into the 31st century, with a lot of color and black and white illustrations. So let's have a look at what's in the book. It is a chunker. It's over 500 pages. All the last several pages are mostly just lists of different stuff. We'll have a brief look at those as well. And I figured that we'd look at the most interesting or useful parts of this work instead of going into exhaustive detail here. Let's have a look at the contents first. We've got a prologue, a foreword, universe in miniature, so that's going to be about the game itself behind the novel series. I think it's fairly interesting that this book kind of assumes that the readers know about BattleTech through the novels and not the games. I guess that's sort of a reflection of how BattleTech was received in Germany, I guess, because maybe the books, novels were just more popular than the game itself. I think that's fairly interesting. They are everywhere. BattleTech, a multimedial work of art, so there's a lot of it's about the different types of media that BattleTech is involved in. Somerset Strikers, Mech Warriors conquer the TV screen, so this is about the TV series. There are brief explanations of what happens in the different episodes. Question and answer, how do the makers see it? What happened until now? So this is a big all 30-page look into the historical stuff in BattleTech, what happened until now. Home of Civilization, again like a 60-page introduction into Inner Sphere, the most important places and events. At the Edge of Night, this is about the periphery. And up next we have the threat from beyond the periphery. This is about the clans. The games are on. Solaris 7. This is like a who is who of the BattleTech Universe, so a lot of almost 100 pages of character biographies, the most important people in the universe. Here is a timeline of the most important historical events of the universe year by year. This is about the kinds of units in BattleTech, so there's infantry and mechs and battle armor and that sort of thing. Here is a brief thing about the starships, the spaceships. But what does it look inside? So this is about the inner workings of a BattleMech. Fire at will, offensive and defensive systems, the Chronicle of the Kings. This is a timeline of the development of BattleMechs. This is pretty good actually. And what is BattleTech? So this is a sort of a brief analysis of how BattleTech became a success in those now early years. And at the end we have like almost 40 pages of lists. What lists? Well, all novels, all gaming publications, as well, very interestingly, a German-English list of names. So if you don't know what something is in English, you can just check the end of this book. Would have been pretty nice in 2002 when you probably didn't have much in the way of something like Sarna.net. So let's take a closer look at some of the stuff in this book. I have to mention that I haven't read this from cover to cover. It is, I have to say, a little bit dry. It is, after all, a sort of a reference book. It's not a fiction book. It's a reference book, and it's written in a way that reflects that as well. And a lot of the information isn't very interesting. Like, I know this stuff already, or I'm just not too fussed about it. You know, like general history of the Inner Sphere or something. You know, I know that stuff. I don't have to read it again. But there are some cool parts here. The first one I found interesting was the interview part. It's not very long. There is an interview from the 80s with L. Ross Babcock III and Jordan Weisman. What I find interesting is that they don't actually mention where this interview is from, but you know, it's nice to read about the origins of BattleTech. There's also an interview with Michael Stackpole, which I believe is exclusive to this book, because it says it was done in early 2002 by email. So I believe this is very specifically made for this book. What I found interesting personally was this little part here where they ask how they came up with the clans. And Stackpole explains that they were in 88, they were in a Congress for Game Manufacturers Association in Las Vegas with Jordan Weisman. And they were just, you know, walking around talking about BattleTech. Jordan had read the half of the manuscript for Riposte, and, you know, they were talking about Morgan Kell's adventures with Katrina Steiner. And from there on, they went on to talk about Kerensky's Exodus, and if Natasha Kerensky was in any way actually related to General Kerensky. And then they came on to Wolf's Dragoons, who were already in the setting, but I guess their idea wasn't really sort of crystallized yet, because Stackpole says here, I turned to Jordan and said, "Oh my God, they're not Wolf's Dragoons, they are the Wolf Dragoons." And that was sort of the starting point for the idea of the class. And after he came back home, he wrote like a text, sort of the basis for the idea of class. I thought that was pretty interesting. I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed in the book in the fact that, again, it's a reference book and it works in that way, but it's a bit of a dry read. As an example, of what I mean is this part about periphery. The periphery, and it's basically just a dictionary of sorts. It has, in alphabetical order, different kinds of terms and words associated with the periphery. Alliance Military Corps, Outer World Alliance, some maps, of course, Magistracy of Canopus and Bandit Kings, and it's not a very exciting read. It feels like a history textbook or something. And again, this is what it's sort of supposed to be, but it's not the most exciting thing to read, really. There's some nice artwork in the book, color stuff, as you can see, as well as some black and white stuff. What I find sort of a shame is that there are no picture credits in this book. I don't believe there's anything that was made specifically for this book, but I can't really tell because there are no picture credits, which I find somewhat unfortunate, really. Here is the part with the character biographies. I think this would have been pretty neat to have in 2000 when you wouldn't have had something like Sarna.net. It's just almost 100 pages of different people, including photos, or not photos, but pictures, which I find very good. But this is the sort of thing that is very much of its time. Like, this is something you really don't need 20 years later. You have Sarna.net. If you need to find information on Alexander Kerensky, you can just Google the guy and find a very comprehensive article, which is going to be more comprehensive than this sort of pretty comprehensive text here. So this part of this book is rendered sort of totally obsolete. I can't say I've read all of this because I know most of this stuff. I've seen the names, I've read the biographies to some extent at least. But it would have been great to have in 2002. This part of the book, the timeline of the history of the BattleTech universe, has sort of suffered the same sort of fate as the character biography part, in that it's obsolete, made obsolete by the internet. It's nicely done, You got dozens and dozens of pages of history, what happened in every single year that's relevant, all the big events of the BattleTech universe. But, it's finite. It only goes up until 3061, which already would have been sort of out of date by the time it was released, because it was released in 2002 when WizKids was already going to release the Dark Age game, and the timeline would have gone a little bit further to 3067 or something in the Civil War era. So this is already out of date, and a lot has happened since then. So it's obsolete, but would have been pretty cool to have in 2000 when you couldn't just Google what happened in BattleTech in year 3046 or whatever. What I find somewhat questionable about the layout of this book are these Kings of the Battlefield text boxes. They are brief descriptions of different mechs. For example, this is the Shadowhawk, and you got the Hussar here as well. And they don't actually have anything to do with what this article is about. This is the introduction to the history of the BattleTech universe. So why are they here? They aren't mentioned on these pages, and they don't have anything to do with this. I think they should have just put these in a different section, and it doesn't also help the matter at all that the book doesn't have an index or anything. You can't, if you want to find information on the Shadowhawk, there is no page in this book that says you can read about the Shadowhawk on this page. That I find sort of silly. I think they really should have thought about that a bit more. Maybe the idea is to sort of break up the monotony of the sort of dry text, but I don't like this particular part of this book. And we now come to what I think is the best part of this book, and it's still sort of usable and very relevant because I don't think something like this exists elsewhere. And it's the Chronicle of the Kings, the timeline of the development of BattleMechs. And this is a bit like the general universe timeline, but this is from the sole perspective of what happened when it comes to BattleMechs and their advances and development. Every single year when something interesting happened is detailed here. When certain mechs were brought to market, when something was started to be prototyped and that sort of thing, reactions, different events related to BattleMechs themselves. This is fantastic, actually. I did read through this and there was some new information. I generally find the BattleMechs themselves the most interesting part of BattleTech's lore. So this was a pretty great read, and you don't really find this on Sarna.net or elsewhere. So this is really good. This is really nice. I kind of want to translate all of this and put it online for people to read, but you know, maybe I'll do that, maybe I won't. It's a really good part of this book, and again, still sort of relevant and readable. Really good. And at the end of the book, we have the lists, and it's a pretty funny part of the book. This just lists out all of the novels that have been released up until this point in German, that is. Now you got the English versions of it. Lots and lots of books, source books, technical readouts, scenario packs. All of that is listed until 2002 when this thing was released. And computer games, map sets, all sorts of things here. But I just wanted to show this. This is sort of, I just find this sort of cute. This is the German-English name list, because the mech names were also translated into German when they brought it on the market. For example, let's say the Dunkelfalke is a very popular mech. In German, Dunkelfalke, it's the Shadowhawk. So if you would have been a German BattleTech player meeting up with English-speaking people or reading books or something, you could just try to find the names here if you don't know what's going on. It's actually pretty fantastic. It would be even better if you had the other version as well. You'd have the English-German dictionary, so to say. You've even got clan stuff, you've got spaceships, and you've got vehicles. Everything's been translated here. I think that's sort of cute. Again, you can use Sarna.net for this sort of thing now, but this would have been pretty useful actually in 2002. So there you go. BattleTech, die Welt des 31. Jahrhunderts. A pretty interesting exclusive German book from 2002. Again, it's made sort of obsolete by Sarna.net, and also I've read on Sarna, the article on this book says that there are some inaccuracies and apocryphal stuff. Some parts of it don't really make sense or are just incorrect information, but you know, they wouldn't have been able to check absolutely everything in 2002 when making this book, probably. Fun book. I don't regret spending 20 euros or something on it used. It's in decent quality condition. Nice book. But I am looking forward to getting BattleTech Universe and seeing how it stacks up to this old reference book. Anyway, that's pretty much the video for this time. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.